Tim
first. We have Dr. Tim first. Yes. This is going to be a day.
Yes. Right. I love this. If you've ever had like something in your head, like you just want to squeeze baby's cheeks and you don't know what the word for that is, today's your day. We're going to find out.
Learn. Positive lexicography.
Yes, which I didn't even know was a thing. And positive psychology, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like I know about psychology generally, and I know some of it's not so positive. Some of it's positive. So I'm excited about this. But I discovered Tim Lomas through an article I read about words that other languages have for feelings that we all experience, but there's no word for it in English. So he's got a whole project called the Positive Lexicography Project, where he finds those words for us. And we're going to talk with Greg Harbut, who is a bloodstock agent, which
means he
really
feeds.
It does not. No, he's in Thoroughbred horses. So we're going to talk with him about racing in this year's Kentucky Derby and what he's doing to bring about change in the sport of horse racing.
But do not ever ask to see what's in his briefcase. Backpack Show.
So positive psychology is a thing, just so you know.
It's a thing. Boo! Happy Wednesday, says Michelle. I touched your buttons.
Stop it.
Good morning, says Kate. Hey, John.
Hello, John. We will be positive John any second now.
So there are those who call him Tim.
Tim has a meeting to get to. Let's get Tim out of here.
Yeah, let's get it. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Hey, guys.
Hello.
How are you?
So good.
I have something in common in appreciation of words from other languages. I spent a lot of money on a domain even for this because I fell in love with a word in the documentary Happy, which it turns out it's an Okinawan word, not even Japanese. It's only in Okinawa. And it means one family, meaning not the family that gave birth to you, but the family you choose. It's called Manchu, M-O-N-C-H-U. So that's for you, Dr. Tim.
I can have it.
Talk to me a little bit about your land of words and what made you start down that road.
Oh gosh, it's a long story. Like, how long have you got? Seriously, I could go on all day.
You're the one that has a meeting to get to.
That's true. That's true. And I'm going to try and talk quickly. For context, it's kind of early where I am, and I'm trying to be positive because of the show.
Because that's your thing.
And I'm English, so I'm not usually positive. But so yeah, there's a long story. I went. When I was a teenager, I taught English in China. That's probably the starting place. I taught there for 6 months and then traveled around and then visited a load of monasteries and encountered all these ideas and practices. I had no idea what was happening. It was kind of expanding my horizons, blew my mind kind of thing. And trying to ask people what these words meant. And then even when they try and describe them, I realized I had no reference point really, no concept, no way of grasping these. These are like outside my cultural horizons. So that was really the way back point. And I think they've always been this notion of ideas being outside of my mental framework, outside of my cognitive horizons, I think has always been like on my mind since then. But then the more recent point was, I think this was all just bubbling away. And then that was back in the late 90s, because I'm getting on a bit now. But then in 2015, I was at this positive psychology conference in Florida. And I was wandering around and I stumbled across this talk by a Finnish researcher on this Finnish term sisu, which is like a form of extraordinary courage and determination. And the woman's name is Emilia Lahti. She's got this great website, Sisu Not Silence, if people are interested. So I heard her talk and, she was describing this as this incredible resource that people had in Finland, and it was central to their identity and culture. But she said it was something that all people could sort of tap into to an extent, and her PhD was focused on drawing out all the nuances of this quality, and that just kind of set my mind off thinking. And then I got home, and often how good ideas happen, I was chatting to my mom back in her kitchen, and then because she speaks a bunch of languages, and we were thinking about words in like German and French that we know that don't have an equivalent in English. And then by the end of that conversation, I thought it'd be just great to have a whole collection of these kind of words. So that's how it came to be.
So we're talking about the kinds of words that are like what it feels like to walk in a forest for hours and get lost in nature, like words for things like that.
Yeah, like all those kind of words. I mean, it's positive, so it's all about well-being, but you can stretch the boundaries of well-being pretty broadly. So it's really just kind of anything that's interesting. So it's like there are a bunch of positive feelings, but I don't know if people listening in a workplace context, just like interesting words around like workplace practices or experiences or character building or spirituality. So really, it's kind of anything that makes you feel your life is going to be a bit better in some way.
Hit us with one of those words. What's like a favorite one for whatever reason? What one sounds fun off the tongue or something like that? Or what one do you pull out after a few pints, perhaps?
Well, there are a few relating to drinking. One was on my mind right now because it's early where I am, so I'm having coffee. And then there's this word fika. I don't know if you've heard of this, and it's becoming a thing now, kind of more globally. It's becoming embraced as a practice and a loan word. So it just means coffee break. I think it's, let me check. I think it's Danish, I think. But
Fika.
The idea is that it's not just kind of a mundane break, but it's just like this important, like this ritual of connection and bonding and making it a real part of your day where you can like just take a proper time out and connect with people. So having coffee at the moment, that's one comes to mind.
Interesting. Well, we'll say hi to John Drosha, who's showing up. Maybe he's got time for a little fika with us. So, hi, John. Welcome to your first time on the Backpack Show.
Good morning.
Fika. I feel like right after coffee, you make fecal matter. So maybe that's where.
Stop it. Wait, where's my yellow card? There it is.
I think Greg just caught on to what kind of show he's on now.
Oh,
I don't know why I said yes.
Dear. So my favorite is
Swedish, says Heather.
My favorite is gigil. It's that word that means like something so beloved you just want to squash it.
That's nice one. Yeah.
I can't remember. I can't even say the language it's from, but that's the one I found.
Yeah, I want to say that's Tagalog.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
That sounds right. Because when she shared it, I think that's what she said.
The impulse to squish something because it's so beloved.
I honestly sometimes lose track because like there's quite a lot of words in the list by now. So my mind can only fit in so many at one time. But I think that's Tagalog.
So how deep did you dive into this then? Like how long so far have you spent on it, and how much further do you think you have to go?
Well, how to say that? So like it's been since 2015 and it's been just evolving and building up gradually. And then it's been really cool because I did this like initial analysis of a couple of hundred words and then published it in this paper. But then that led to this article in the New Yorker, which is maybe what you saw. And then, but that like brought people's attention because obviously no one had heard me before then. And I'd wanted to make this project collaborative. So it's not just me on my own in my armchair, like searching away, but people like around the world would, give me ideas and suggestions, and it'd be this collaborative project. So I made my own website, this kind of homemade website type thing. And then I put this evolving list there and people started checking it out and giving me suggestions and also like help me refine the definitions because, it's the irony of trying to give a description of an untranslatable word, so, but you can roughly translate it, but it doesn't get all the meanings. But anyway, I put like a brief meaning on the website and then people help me refine them. So
they can be pretty nuanced, can't they? And then it evolves over time too. Like we have words that used to have sort of a secondary meaning and it's sort of fallen away, and others that have taken on another one. So
that's it. And and you can get like a word like, I don't know, like the Tao from Taoism, and you read a whole book on that word and you're still not going to quite capture it. So it's tricky, but you can do your best and then kind of give links to where people can find out more. So it's been building up. There's like nearly 1,700 words now, but it's still like such a, I don't know.
But positive.
I'm aware like how limited it is. Like there's around 150 languages currently represented, but there's maybe like 7,000 languages in the world. So there's like so much further to go. But you've got to start somewhere.
You're focusing on positive words, not necessarily like there's other words, obviously, but some of the words they're positive, but they kind of are tinged with a little bit of bittersweet, sort of like they're nuanced.
Yeah, that's it. Because it goes back to what I said about the boundaries of well-being and being expansive. Because like obviously you can think like really upbeat and bright, positive feelings, but there's, for example, a bunch of really interesting feelings that are more mixed and ambivalent. And like interweaving light and dark, but they're like important to people as well. So there's like a whole bunch of words relating to longing, and longing is a really interesting kind of concept when you think about it. It does blend this like happiness and sadness together, but it like still matters a lot to people. Like the term in like Portuguese, saudade, and that's probably a terrible pronunciation.
I know that word, saudade.
Yeah, and but it's like important to people, and it's a kind of this melancholic longing, but it's also like part of like Portuguese and Brazilian like, culture and identity, and it means a lot to people. Or there's like Herrais in Welsh, which kind of covers sort of similar ground, and then so these are like tinged with melancholy, but they are like matter to people and they're important. So when you think about positivity and well-being, it's not just like these like bright upbeat emotions, but you can really think about like lots of fine-grained, textured, nuanced things as well, which really makes it kind of super interesting as well.
Kate says, I need a word for when you think you're listening and commenting from Facebook, but find out you're on LinkedIn. John Stanley says, the word is oops.
Oops, yeah. See, English has some good words too, though. So,
I mean, some, but what about positive psychology generally? So do you study specifically positive psychology, or do you just study psychology and then kind of specialize in the good parts?
in the good parts, yeah, no, I've like for the last 7 years, I've been in positive psychology because I have been teaching on this, like masters in positive psychology in London, the University of East London, and then but like the field's pretty broad. So, like you kind of said at the start, like psychology does focus on, like some darker topics and focuses on disorder and dysfunction. But like the origin of positive psychology was like we need to also focus on like happiness and flourishing and kind of more positive realms of life. But that's pretty broad. So it encompasses everything from like doing okay at work and engagement and flow to spirituality to like mindfulness to positive emotions, to like society and politics and economics and how to structure the world in a way to make people more likely to flourish. So it's really such a broad arena, and there's so many links with other areas because sometimes the field feels like it's got these walls around it where it's like separated from other areas, but actually there's all these links between different fields. And like humanistic psychology came before it and is still going, and there's like real close affinities with that. So it's a really fascinating area of psychology, and like the name is kind of misleading because like it makes it sound like you're thinking of positive thinking, but it's really not just, I mean, it's so much broader than that. So like for example, these emotions I mentioned that are more ambivalent and mixed. So yeah, and it's an evolving field. It's quite new, so it's almost like still finding its feet. How do I grade students if they're not positive? Well, but we can't let that affect us. You got to be kind of non-judgmental.
You're gonna get a C and you're gonna like it.
It's not that students we have to feel positive. It's more just well-being generally, which I think really like most people in psychology are interested in. So it's almost like a bit of an artificial division, but you can see how it was good to have this like emphasis. Well, let's still focus on like topics like happiness and flourishing and make these like because like they deserve investigating, they deserve our time. So how kind of,
but it's not like you have a feeling and then say, wow, I wish there was a word for describing this in English. Like other people who speak other languages will bring it to your attention that they've been learning English and there's no word they want to express.
Exactly, yeah. Well, because like one of the when you think about the context of the project and the field of psychology, like you can make these critiques of the field being like pretty Western centric and like English centric. The international journals and conferences are all in English, and there's obviously so many like ideas and theories and traditions and insights in other cultures and languages that like we'd be missing out on if we only considered English. So it's more about like trying to broaden the horizons of the field. And like I often like thinking of language as a map to help us kind of navigate our existence. And then our own map in English it's okay, but it's limited and it's partial. And then together, all different languages like complement one another. So it's this idea about just trying to like learn from each other and then bring ideas into the field, into English and so on. But you're right, like so other people have been suggesting words, which has been lovely to hear. So the project's kind of grown organically in that way.
I have two questions. The first is that Britain post-Empire has always been sort of seeking some identity, and the way Britain did what it did with Empire was, they rolled Britishness out across the world. They steamrolled it everywhere, the way we would if we had done it first. America gladly would have done the same thing. No slight on the culture, but
we couldn't. We were a colony.
Being from there, I guess my question in that statement is this why this fascination? Why to kind of absorb more culture? Because Western culture is such meat and veg. It's just not there. There's not a lot of there to have, so you can come and pull it from all these other sources. Am I way off base, or is that part of what made Tim Lomas go searching for that?
Yeah, there's probably something about that. I mean, I don't know if you're just catching me, but like our country's such a mess, and we've obviously done such terrible things in the past. And I've always had this sense. I mean, I also do love like aspects of our culture, and it's pretty. There's lots of rich aspects to it, but I'm also aware like how partial and limited and flawed and it is. And then I don't know if it's just from my early days like traveling in China, but like how how beautiful other cultures can be in other places, and really wanting to embrace them. And I've always enjoyed traveling. But it's also like when you think about like the West, but like the West is so like heterogeneous and mixed and dynamic, and there's so many differences within the West. Like I don't know, for example, like the Nordic countries, they're so different, and they're really like egalitarian and a lot of kind of common like emphasis on relationships. So even just taking a Western context, you can look at all these interesting nuances. So a bunch of my words might be from like Scandinavian and Nordic languages, and they bring out all these interesting nuances. So you can look really far afield, but you can also look closer afield, so like within Europe, or words from Italy or Spain or France, and I think each country really has quite a unique character and all its beautiful traditions and values that so there's like it's almost like so much to learn from everywhere. Yeah,
we could argue that EastEnders and Cockney is a completely different language than the Queen's tongue as well. So,
oh my gosh, do you know EastEnders?
I do, yeah. Russell Brand and Idris Elba are kind of probably the most famous examples that made it over. But I paid a lot of attention
them
to
all the
culture.
time.
Yeah, we're chums.
Oh,
John says on YouTube that this is so important.
I know the show The EastEnders, if that's what you mean as well. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's what I thought you meant. I didn't realize that I made it over. But obviously, Idris Elba and Russell Brand, they're good exports. They're good.
Some of the famous EastEnders. But
Kate's wondering about your top 5 words in any language.
Oh man, okay, that's hard. I honestly have so many favorites, but I'm gonna say I really like the French. It's not really a word, but it's joie de vivre, joy of life, and the joy of living, and it's kind of zest and vitality for life. And that's kind of cool. I mean, I don't exactly have it this early in the morning, but that's a nice one.
Well, you probably Instagram your favorites. So if anybody goes over to Instagram, Happy Words Project, they'll see what I would imagine are a selection of your favorites.
Yeah, I do a word of the day. And then because like my favorites changed frequently. Another area I'm really drawn to, and it's hard to pick one word exactly, but like since being in China, I've been, trying to maintain like a meditation practice, and I've been into Buddhism. And then for this other research project I've been involved with, I've been very connected with Japan recently, and there's so many amazing aesthetic concepts relating to, well, Buddhism in Japan, but also just Japanese culture more generally. I don't know if people know wabi-sabi, which is a kind of aged and weathered beauty, but then there's also this counterpart that's mono no owari, which is a more like ephemeral, fleeting beauty. So there's all these like, I don't know.
That's like when you're 17 and for 45 minutes you look the best you're ever going to look, like that.
I think that would fit in, yeah. So I love these words because like some words I just hear them and I'm like, okay, I know that feeling. That's great to have a word for it. But other words, it's like I hadn't really thought of that experience or encountered it. So it kind of takes me into a new realm. So, some words it's like, cool, I have the label now. But other words, it's like a window into a slightly kind of new realm of experience. So yeah, some of those Japanese aesthetic ones are particularly like that.
Dr. Tim Lomas, thank you so much for coming on and being part of the show, sharing some of your happy words with us. I said Dr. Tim Lomas. Oh, sorry, Tim. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Tim, who we don't even know. So
Tim
glad to have
you
you
on. Get to. What's that feeling when you've got to get to a meeting and you do an interview?
Oh, yeah, that needs to be.
Well, here's Tim. I kicked him. Gone.
Oh,
go
thank
to your
you so
meeting,
much,
Tim.
Tim.
There you go. See, that's how the show works. There's a word called the Irish exit, which is get out before people know you're trying to get out. That's what we live by here. Thank you, Tim, so much.
You pushed him out. I don't feel like that's the same.
It's similar.
I think it's different. I just want to come back to John's comment that, it's really important to know words for positive things when everybody's in the middle of being pretty nasty to each other right now. Right. I think I feel like dwelling on positive concepts like that has to be good for your overall outlook. So probably I would say, like for me, going through his Instagram, which I recommend doing if you haven't, like exploring positive words for positive emotions that we've all experienced, but maybe like not for a while. It's just a reminder that there's so many good experiences still to be had, which is easy to forget when you're locked down inside.
Indeed,
Hi, Bob.
Indeed. Hey, listen, we're sponsored by some people. We're sponsored by StreamYard. See brogan.me/StreamYard. Come take a look at that. It is so important that you realize that you can make your own show like this only better. StreamYard makes it super easy. Kerry turned me onto it. That's why we have a show running on it. We are so thrilled with this platform. I sold one to a guest yesterday. That's how good it is.
I love it. It's so easy. I was using it before you were using it, and you really had no interest in learning a new thing.
No.
And it was like, it's so easy. You have to. So he did. And here we are. And we love it.
Who was it? Someone said something nice
before they were a sponsor. What do you mean somebody said something nice to you? Who said something nice to you?
You put up some kind of thing that said Chris Brogan.
They said you're the master of the Irish exit. I don't know if that's being nice to you. I mean, that's accurate. That's not. Yeah.
All right. So you can have your own show just like this, only
with your own Irish exit.
There you go. We're sponsored by Website. If you're an author and you've written an incredible world-class book that people can't even believe how good it is, they're like, oh my gosh, you don't even need a website for this book because it's so good.
You need a website for the book. Maybe because how will people discover it if you don't have a website? But bookshelf. But just because you're an author doesn't mean that you are a web designer or developer. So if you need a website and you have no idea how to do it, the easiest way to do it is to go to pub-site.com. You can put it together yourself. It's crazy easy to use. If you really
3 hours.
Don't want, it's super easy. If you really don't even want to do that, don't want to think about it, they can put your website together for you. And it's just to have them put it together for you is $499. That is insanely inexpensive. So, and it is a great website, has everything you need to sell books because it's powered by FSB Associates, which is the best publicity firm around. They've been in business 25 years. They know what kind of website you need to get that book online working for you.
They're also sponsor of Person of the Day, and I forgot to give us a Person of the Day yesterday for reasons I don't know why. How in the world could I have possibly forgotten? So yesterday's Person of the Day we carry over today, and we're going to have another one later on today. So John Drosha is our Person of the Day for today. Thank you, John. Super good comment you made. That is it, your Person of the Day. That entitles you to a free apple just like this one. Just have to go to a store and buy it your damn self. There you go. And there's another Person of the Day.
Sandra says you can't be negative when you're focused on positive words or on gratitude. I have to agree. Lots of StreamYard love coming here and some PubSite love too. So this is like, so it's $499 to have them build your website for you at PubSite. To do it yourself is $19.99 a month. And that's it. So
and we have 14 days free. You can make one this afternoon, check it out. And if you don't like it, then forget about it, you know?
Yeah.
All right, listen.
Did Chris keep yesterday's apple to himself? Yes, John.
I have to tell you, I bought a big bag of apples from there's an orchard right by my house, literally like less than 1 mile from my house. And
I do that all the time.
Eating the hell out of orchard apples right now because it's that time of year. Listen, our next guest is a bloodstock agent, which means he feeds vampires.
He does not. He's in the thoroughbred business, and his horse Necker Island raced in the Kentucky Derby this year. Well, it's co-owned horse.
Necker Island, is it co-owned by a Brit that we know?
No,
that's quite the name. All right, listen, we got to bring him in.
How does co-ownership work? You're like, I have the good parts of the horse, and you paid less, so you get like the part I don't like.
Feet and butt. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Good morning.
Very well. How are you guys doing?
Good. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the horse business. From what I understand, it's in your blood.
It is. Good question. I'm a third generation.
Oh no.
Father had a.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Are we here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can't see you guys. I can only see myself. But
we made you look extra handsome and big. You're good.
Thank you for the help. I'm a third generation horseman. My great grandfather had a lot of notoriety with his association with a horse by the name of Man of War. Many people consider that horse to be the greatest racehorse of all times. And my grandfather, Tom Harbut, was a very famous horseman, working with a lot of the leading thoroughbreds and owners of the time. A couple Kentucky Derby winners, working for Louis B. Meyer with MGM Studios, Elizabeth Arden, and ultimately end up finishing his career with Harry F. Guggenheim of the Guggenheim family. So I guess at the time that I can remember as a adolescent, I've always had a deep love and affinity for racehorses and thoroughbred horses, and went out to school and discovered that I could have a career in doing something that I love.
Wow.
So you're a third generation, you said, or fourth generation?
Third generation.
Okay. Because there's something that happens a lot in businesses, and especially family-owned businesses, and I'm curious if it applies or doesn't. Fourth generation is the problem. Because what happens is first generation, they had all of the hardship, right? They say all this stuff about, I slept on hay, I ate feed with the horses, I had a really crappy life. So then dad grows up, hearing that story every single day from his pop, right? And then pop tells dad, dad tells you, but now you're like that, you're distanced because now we've kind of lived off of that a little bit. So we're that third generation where it's like, you got to try to remember how important this is to me. Third generation, but then fourth generation, that's tricky.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we invited the guest on the show so Chris could just talk.
No, I had to set up my premise. I don't have to say anything. My premise was that come fourth generation, it's like out of the blood entirely. So I'm just curious how that lines with what you're doing with horses. It's definitely different for all businesses.
Well, it skipped a generation with my father, so hopefully remains in the family for a few more generations. But it did skip a generation. But so a valid point that you raised.
But I think that it's something that you either love or you don't. I don't know if did you find it was an acquired taste, or were you immediately drawn to kind of the family business?
Well, I was immediately drawn to horses, not necessarily the business. I was very fortunate to be able to travel the world on a program sponsored by Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai. It really opened up my eyes to horse management, being able to see the horse business on a global level, and just having a lot of opportunities that without being on that program, I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's probably when I was on that program that my eyes really began to thinking that, I want to do what my family, has done for several generations, is do this for myself and be able to expand upon the foundation that they laid.
Sandra says naming your horse Necker Island is positive thinking. And they said, isn't that where Richard Branson lives?
That is.
So I have a question about racing in general. So one of the things that's happened this year is you had a horse in the Kentucky Derby, and there was pressure for you to sit out the race because of everything happening with Black Lives Matter and Breonna Taylor. So pressure on you to, in protest, not race. But your horse was the first Black-owned horse to race in 13 years. So you went ahead and raced. Tell me about that.
We did. There's three partners that own Necker Island. Ray Daniels, who's a fellow African-American, a gentleman by the name of Wayne Sherritt, and myself. Overall, we received a ton of support from the community to race the horse, but there was obviously some who felt that we should use the platform to bring awareness in regards to Breonna Taylor. Many of you are familiar with Breonna Taylor and the case that's still ongoing. From the beginning, we were very adamant that we stood for justice for Breonna Taylor. But we felt it was important, to bring awareness about the contributions that African Americans have made to the thoroughbred industry. In the beginning of the history, African Americans really dominated the sport and this industry, not so much in recent times. And we felt that what bigger platform to bring awareness than on the Kentucky Derby stage, where you have millions of viewers. It's the pinnacle race of success for anyone involved in the business. And we, really couldn't lose sight of progress over protest. And for us to be able to participate in this race, we really looked at it as progress. And in fact, with my family history, my grandfather owned a horse in the 1962 Kentucky Derby, but due to racial injustice and segregation, he was not allowed to be listed nor attend the Kentucky Derby. So for me, it was a direct vindication for my family, to be able to come back as his grandson, be an owner, and be able to participate in full capacity. So.
Wow. And Necker Island made a good showing for you?
He did. The Kentucky Derby is one of the toughest races that a horse can participate in. You have to earn your way into it. At about 25 to 30,000 horses born every year, only 20 horses get into the starting gate. So it's probably going to be the toughest race that he will ever run in. It was 18 horses. We wanted a top 10 showing. We were able to finish ninth. So we were very pleased.
It's big though too, because that sets up, I want to get back to the whole idea of, the bloodstock agent and all that, because it really, especially as it applies to Dubai, the horse placing, ninth is, so, oh, well, he didn't win. It changes the value of the horse. It changes the future of the horse. It changes everything about the life of the horse. Can you talk a little bit about that? The business of what happens after that race?
Yeah, so horse business is big business for those not familiar with it. There's several stallions here in Kentucky that stand anywhere from 250,000 to 350,000 a session during the breeding season, and they breed anywhere from 120 mares to a couple hundred mares a year at that price. And based upon the races that horses win and or place in, that adds to the value of their stud fee ultimately when they end up retiring. So,
how involved are you in that breeding? That's a question from Debbie Saviano in the audience.
Very involved, not directly as far as owning stallions myself, but I represent a lot of global consortment of clientele that own stallions themselves or invested in stallion shares. So that's something that I dabble in daily.
Debbie also says that most people don't know how popular horse racing is for the Saudis. So it's very awesome to hear your story. And John says, amazing accomplishment to be the owner of a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Co-owner? Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and somebody says, great question, Chris. A lot of encouragement for
Thanks,
you.
Kate. Greg, so you went over to Dubai with Sheikh Mohammed, and that's a different space than Saudi. So it's interesting to think both. What's that like? What's the international / Middle Eastern experience of all this? Because they seem to be the front runners of who's investing at least in this kind of a thing right now.
It's a good question. Saudi, in fact, now has the world's richest race. I think it was ran last year at $20 million. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was $20 million. Before that, Dubai was the world's richest race. So they're sort of going back and forth on that. Saudi is sort of in the beginning stages of hosting races and having international appeal, where Dubai's sort of been on the mark, I'd say, for the last 15 to 20 years with having international participants, actually having a breeding program in place and being recognized on a world international stage. But it's very different when you go over there, obviously, with the weather. Something as simple as grass, everything has to be brought in. All the horses have air-conditioned stalls due to the heat and things of that nature. But like anything else in Dubai, the stables and the training facilities are just built on this grander level that you just have to be over there to see it. I mean, I couldn't describe it and give it justice. It's really something interesting to see.
When you get home, are the horses disappointed? Like, oh, I want my install fountain and stuff.
No.
They want to go back.
These racehorses receive the best of care no matter which location they're in, but it's just unique and what has to be done to take care of a horse in Dubai, just because you can't really, grow hay and things that are essential. Everything has to be brought in and everything has to be modified to be able to help the horse adapt due to the heat and weather conditions.
What role does intuition play? Because Chris had mentioned there's data and analytics and everything involved, things you have to look at, but there's also a feeling you get deep down about a horse and its potential. What role does that play?
Absolutely. Obviously you use technology with data and analytics and heart scans and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, there's nothing better than trusting your gut and your instinct. And if you feel good about a horse, you have to move forward. If you don't feel good, you pass on the horse. So, I use a lot of tools when purchasing and selecting horses, but the greatest asset that I have is the gut feeling from within.
And the work's still to be done now, the sport of horse racing. Now that, you've been in the Kentucky Derby, that's such an accomplishment. How does the work continue now for making the sport overall more inclusive?
Great question. There's a lot of work to be done. It's no secret that this sport and the industry could be more inclusive of others. My partner, Ray Daniels, and I have actually set up a organization called the Ed Brown Society, named after one of the most prolific minority trainers. He's actually in the Hall of Fame, with the key strategic mission of bringing awareness to minorities about the business, providing scholarships and training for younger people to come and get involved at a upper level management area, as well as sitting down with key industry leaders to work out a plan to provide marketing and things of that nature to be more inclusive of minorities. When you look at tennis and hockey and things of that nature, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they didn't necessarily look inclusive of minorities. But the leadership got together, sat down, came up with a strategic plan. Now you have athletes in place that the younger generation can look up to. Serena Williams and her sister Venus Williams really paved the way for the new generation of minority tennis players that's coming through. And we're optimistic that we can sort of follow that pathway, sit down with industry leaders and do the same thing in the thoroughbred business.
I have a weird connection to Serena Williams. I'm kind of chummy with her husband, who is related to this story in that I went to Abu Dhabi with him. So Sheikh Mariam, who's married to the Sheikh right now, has this, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like they bring people over to want to talk about weirdo stuff. So they brought the co-founder of Reddit, they brought one of the early founders of Twitter, and me by mistake, I think. And so we hung out over there. But Alexis, super famous in the tech world, but is also just basically Mr. Serena Williams now, And so watching his conversations, hearing what you said, it really ties it together. Later in the week, we're talking to Mike Freeman, who's a sports writer, who's reason we're dragging him in is he's got that book out, Football's Fearless Activists, where he covers Kaepernick and all the other people who stood up into that. So it's an interesting time for it, but it's also an interesting thing. My question to bring into this is that owning and horses and all that. This is a not like sport of the people, let's say. How does that come into it at all? I mean, people have questions about racing. There's all the animal rights kind of stuff. Like there's a new environment out there for horses that you also are dealing with, just as you're trying to help get the sport to be a little more inclusive. What's your belly and stuff? Where are you with that, Greg?
Well, there is a lot of awareness with PETA and other organizations right now in thoroughbred racing. But I would beg anyone who has any questions, just come on the backside. Look at the care that these horses receive. Look how happy these horses are to do their job. One thing I said about horses, whether you finish last or you win the race, every horse in that race tries. That's because they're bred to do a job and they enjoy their job. So for those who have questions, the backside is very open. I encourage you to go to a racetrack, look at a race for yourself. And see the care. As far as this perception that it's a very elite sport, there are very wealthy individuals in the sport, but there's also a lot of individuals that are coming in with syndicates, meaning you buy a certain percentage into a horse, and it's very economically friendly, and that's a great way to get started before you make that plunge. So there's several options for those who would like to get involved.
Greg, do you see a Moneyball theme or concept when purchasing horses? Like, is it about?
Is there some one number out there, or is there some like in the book Moneyball and the movie Moneyball? Basically, what made Billy Beane a better guy was that he figured out on base average was the number out of all the stats a sports guy has. For baseball, on base average was the magic number. Is there a magic number to pick in your horses?
No, I mean there's so many variables in this business, and there's so many things that have to happen from the time of birth till a horse actually runs. There's been great horses that have been purchased for $1,000, as well as a horse that's been purchased for multi-millions of dollars. So, it's sort of like the lottery ticket. You can use all the analytics and the data you want, but if it's not meant for you, it's not going to be meant for you.
Especially because the horse wins or loses. It's just the one horse. It's not like a team that you can,
Correct.
try to get on base with. Sandra says, can you talk about the risks of breeding and training horses? Sounds like the risk is, maybe it doesn't pay off, but one risk anyway.
Yeah, obviously, there's risk in this business. You're dealing with animals. You're not dealing with machines. So just from, a horse getting injured, possibly not making it to the races, spending money to breed a horse and it looks like $1 million, it sells for $1 million, but it just doesn't have the speed or the heart to want to compete. It's a very slow horse. But, those are the inherent risks that people who get involved have to face on a day in, day out basis. But the majority of people who get involved because they love the lifestyle. They like the social aspect of racing, as well as just the overall feeling it is to be in the winner's circle with a horse that you've selected, you've named. It's wearing your silks. It's sort of like owning your own sports franchise. So there's no better thrill or rush for a lot of these owners that are involved in the industry.
Carol wants to know if there's any great underdog or under horse story of a horse that no one expected much from that turned into stars. I mean, I assume besides Seabiscuit, she's talking about.
Well, there's a great horse named John Henry. He was purchased for $1,000 at the horse auction. No one wanted the horse. He ended up becoming a Hall of Fame horse. Won the first edition of the Arlington Million, which was the first $1 million race in North America. You have Sunday Silence. No one wanted that horse. He ended up winning Kentucky Derby and ended up transcending the breed over in Japan with his genetic traits as a stallion. So there's countless stories of the underdog horse winning. That's what makes this game so great. There's no clear-cut game path. There's no amount of money that's going to get you success. That's what gets us up every day and puts joy in our hearts and spirits as we try to find the next best thing.
I love extra that it was named John Henry. Cate asked two questions that sort of relate in one way. She was like, do you ever just go out riding for love? And then she said, do you fall in love with your horses? So she's asking, is there a big emotional element to this because it's animals and not machines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously I'm an animal lover. I do trail ride and yes, I do have love for all the horses that I'm associated with. even horses that we sell off that we no longer own. You know, I follow their career paths and go back and visit them as they're retired. I mean, it's like a part of your family. It's sort of hard not to fall in love
What happens
with the
after their
horse.
racing career's over? That's what Deb wanted to know, actually, when they're retired.
Well, a
What
lot
do
of
they
race
do?
horses don't race very, very long, but the longevity of a horse is anywhere between 18 to 25 years. So normally what we do is rehab them and get them more involved in dressage and trail riding and things of that nature to give them a second job. You know, sort of hard to be 3 or 4 years old and you're retired with nothing to do. So a lot of those horses strive off having a second job, and that's usually what we do. Some horses go into breeding careers, those that have shown elite levels, and they'll be put into the circuit to be bred and to sell their offspring, and some are just turned out and they live out their days in pasture.
Sandra says it would be difficult to not get emotionally attached to the horses. I would think so. I have a question. So Deb wrote up here about the role of intuition that we were just talking about. I can't find her comment right now, but would you have taken a chance on Sunday silence?
Uh, it's hard to say because I didn't physically look at the horse. You know, all the horses that I purchased, I'm very big on physically looking at the horse, seeing how the biomechanics work, and seeing the feeling that I get. It's easy to say in hindsight, as he's been such a prolific sire and great racehorse, that yes, I would. But to answer that truthfully, that's sort of hard to with me never looking at the horse. So.
Have you ever made a bet like that people were like, "Oh, Greg, I don't know," and then it turned out better than they had hoped?
Yeah, it happened last year. We purchased a very cheap horse for $16,000. She ended up winning several races and ended up placing in a graded stakes race, which is a higher caliber race, and we ended up selling her for a nice profit. So it happened to us a year ago. So.
I mean, not to be so crass as to ask about the money, but sort of in generalization. I mean, you talked earlier about shares in horses and things like that, and syndication of horses and all that sort of a thing. When one invests like a 16,000, it doesn't have to be that specific horse, but you put in 16,000, what's a good yield back for that? Just finances, pure finances, screw love of the animal. Like if you put in 15, do you get 100, you're good, or do you get 30 and you're good? What makes you feel cheery?
Well, anytime you can double your money in any investment, you should do very well. The leaps and bounds and yardage and miles that you can gain in the horse business is like any other investment. The yields and returns are great if you hit it out of the park. So it's sort of hard to put an exact number because it's not necessarily a traditional investment of brick and mortar, but you'd at least want to be doubling your investment at the minimum if it is successful.
I guess you don't get a grumpy phone call from somebody that you're managing their portfolio if you double it, I guess, is what you're saying.
No, I mean, I'm very fortunate to represent the clientele that I represent. These guys are definitely playing on the elite level where they're, in the hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So, when these guys hit home runs, it's serious home runs. And,
they're big home runs.
Yeah, they're huge home runs. So
cool. All right, we have two last parts of this show, Greg. You made it all the way through. Can't even believe it. What a day. So thank you so much for coming and answering all our questions, especially with just all of our, absolute lack of knowledge and what it means to be a taking care of bloodstock agent. I was just like blown. So we had to do another person of the day because we blew it. Sorry, Fazia, but we did one earlier to make up for it. And other person of the day, I'm just gonna make it Cate because Cate was being like cheerleader to questions. So that was
your questions,
specifically my questions, because they're good questions. Greg, we're at the last part of the show, and this is where we ask you one question, which is what goes in your backpack. And the idea is that the world's shifting. We're all building on sand. Nothing's permanent, so you can't take everything, but you can only take basically a backpack. In it, you could put something physical or metaphorical. You could say, good common sense, or you could say
horse sense,
a saddle, good horse sense. You were waiting on that. Greg Harbut, what do you put in the backpack? What goes in?
iPad. So essential for me to be able to connect with family, to be able to bring up anything spiritually I would like, to be able to check on things away from home. So for me, my key essential will be my iPad. It's definitely my lifeline.
I
Thanks.
like that for being the answer. I was not in the least expecting that, which is so fun for me.
What did you think he was going to say?
I don't. Some old thing his granddad had that we're not even going to know what it is. He was going to say, like, you know, a bit from the first bridal that we put together, and you know.
Carol says Cate cheered my question too. Question singular. Every single question Chris asked was like, "Whoa, Chris, way to go!"
My head has been very padded, so I'm feeling good. All right. Well, you know, horse racing is fraught with so many interesting concepts, and the idea that just that, you know, that there's somebody out there that does the back work of making sure that the right horses get to the right owners and all that's big. Like I said, my aunt had horses, and my grandmother once fell off a horse, and let me tell you about that.